Welcome into another edition of the BlueWhite Tailgate Pawcast. Andrew Callista, Mike Gross, and Frank Bodani, the KGB gang, is all here with a victory celebration going on after Penn State dominates the Washington Huskies in the whiteout. What an atmosphere. I loved it. It was great up in the press box. You always love when the in-house announcer makes an announcement. Don't be alarmed. The press box is going to sway. Oh, it was swaying, and the Husky,
baby.
Yeah, the Husky beat writers were loving it. They were laughing, and they had some comparisons they make. They're like, "Are we safe in here?" It's like, "Yeah, we're safe." So we got a lot to cover. We're going to talk a little bit about the college football playoff. We're obviously going to talk Purdue. We're going to talk the Nittany Lions, but first, we're going to flash it back to Saturday. And you can't talk about Saturday, guys, in my opinion, without talking about Tyler Warren. Not once, but twice. Tyler Warren, used down on the goal line in a very similar situation that we saw before the Ohio State game. We didn't see at the Ohio State game. And the fans, they were all over it on Twitter. It was almost like the coaching staff was trolling them a little bit. What do you guys think about Tyler Warren getting a lot of carries and Beau Pribula as well in there, down in the red zone?
Well, one of the things that I thought and talked about that now infamous sequence at the end of the Ohio State game was that I was more bothered by, from a play calling standpoint, more bothered by what happened before the snap than after, kind of. But then on Monday after Ohio State, James talked about, well, sometimes it's about players and not about plays, referring to Tyler Warren. And, the two touchdowns that he had on Saturday in the red zone, one of them was beautifully well blocked. And anybody on their team could have scored on that one. But the other one was just his crazy athleticism on display. So maybe that is the deal, players and not plays.
I get it. I think Andy Kotelnicki found his mind during the Washington game because it had left his body for just a little bit, I think, at Ohio State. Because, the first time they get the ball in the red zone, Beau Pribula, touchdown.
Yep.
The second time they get it in the red zone, Tyler Warren. The third time, Tyler Warren. It's like the three guys we didn't see. It's a different game, a different team, and we'll never know what's going on probably inside the mind on that. But it shows you how special and different, unique, whatever you want to say, Tyler Warren is, because he's 6'6", and that leap into the end zone, he needed every bit of his elevation and his length to get that ball across. And what a play,
Yeah.
And I don't think, if we go back real quick, I don't think I maybe do it from the 3, but when they get it to the 2-yard line, to me, it's how does anybody stop at that necessarily? So I guess we're going forward here, right? Is Tyler Warren still, does he have any ounce of chance of being invited to the Heisman Trophy ceremony?
I don't think so. He certainly is going to be a contender for that Mackey Award, which goes to the top tight end, and also for the Paul Hornung Award, which goes to the most versatile player. I would think when anybody's paying attention, when they think of versatility, they're going to think of him almost first, I would think. So, but Heisman, I don't hear anybody talking about that for him. I don't think it's a crazy idea, but I don't hear anybody talking about it.
Definitely the most versatile. And there's nobody in college football that has played more positions. And when I say more positions, I mean completely different positions. Yes, wide receivers are all over the place in the slot, maybe lining up at H-back, at tailback. That's not the same thing as lining up at center and then hiking the ball and then running down the field, also playing quarterback in multiple formations and doing multiple things there out of the wild.
Also an excellent blocker, right?
Excellent blocker. He would be like a 5-tool baseball player, which is kind of a lost art. I think that's a fair comparison.
And he was a really good baseball player in high school, if you guys know.
And a good basketball player.
Yes. So.
Now, Penn State just announced a verbal commitment this week. I'm not going to remember the kid's name, of course. But he's a 6'5" guy who was a great basketball player who plays quarterback, but he's being recruited as an edge rusher. And when I saw this guy, the first thing I thought was, well, it's the Tyler Warren model. They're looking for the next Tyler Warren, which I'm probably reaching a little bit. But you know who I'm talking about, Frank?
Yeah, Chaz Coleman from Ohio. I think
Yeah.
From Harding. And he's kind of a late riser guy, which you can maybe say that about Tyler Warren.
Yeah.
Okay. And Penn State's, so that's interesting because I look at it like Penn State's, what Tyler Warren is going to do is how can he not help their tight end recruiting, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you see good Lord. I mean, even if you didn't play quarterback in high school and you're going to come there as a tight end, I mean, and it shows, I think it shows people how much that so-called tight end can do for you because you have the elite size and athleticism. And I mean, and Penn State's got other tight ends that are behind him that he leaves this year. I mean, it's not going to be, the cupboard's not bare there. I mean, they have
a freshman tight end who was the number 1 ranked tight end in the country, right?
Luke Reynolds, okay?
Correct.
He was like Tyler Warren in that he was a high school quarterback until his last year, and they basically said, I think you're going to have a better shot at reaching your ceiling if you go tight end. And he's kind of taking the same deal.
Well, you mentioned this, and this is a free-flowing show. This is not how I planned this going at all, but it is perfect for what I did have planned later on. So after the game, who was in front of me, Tyler Warren in the media room, I decided, let's bring up what Trace McSorley said about Mike Gesicki, Tyler Warren. So I asked, what role did Mike Gesicki have in getting Tyler Warren to Penn State? And also, what influence does he have in kind of how he models his game? This is Tyler Warren after the game talking about Mike Gesicki.
Yeah, he was a guy that, was like a living example of what a Penn State tight end can do and what's expected when you come to Penn State. And I met him, and, he's going to help. I don't know if I reached out to him, he'd be happy, to touch back and whatever he might be talking about. But, he's known for the way, like, his great catches and, being able to buy after the catch and stuff like that. So I think that's something I could always, get better at and some that he does really well.
Tyler Warren talked about getting better after the catch. We know Mike Gesicki was great after the catch, also going up and high pointing the football. But guys, that's exactly what you're just talking about and what James Franklin has turned a theory into real life. That's what happens. Guys see how their position is being used, and it's easy to sell those guys on, hey, you're the next one in line.
Yeah, and I think Gesicki was another guy like that, a great basketball player in addition to being a great football player in high school. And of course, he really just essentially played wide receiver in high school and had to learn how to do the blocking and all that kind of stuff. I don't think he would have been, the red zone rusher that or the goal line rusher that Warren is. So they're different in that regard, but they're similar in that. I think I said this before. This position is like a cheat code. These guys that are so athletic and so big, and they're a matchup nightmare for everybody. So take advantage of it.
Right, and this is free flowing, right, Andrew? So okay,
so blow it, baby. Turn it.
Mike Gesicki. So before it was preseason, I was going around asking guys, if you were an animal, what animal would you be? Okay. And I asked Mike Gesicki that. Do you know what animal he kind of like thought for a second? You know what animal he chose?
Kangaroo.
Yes, he did. He did pick the kangaroo. Too easy, I guess.
Serious, he did.
Yeah, he did. He picked kangaroo.
Oh, that was a complete guess.
Because you can see a kangaroo being an outstanding volleyball player. He was an outstanding volleyball player.
And that jump that he had over McSorley in the end zone, that was a kangaroo, right?
Okay.
Okay, the other thing about Tyler Warren is how much do you love his hair? It's like Lord of the Rings battleground hair. You could see him with a sword.
Yeah, I could see him in a Marvel context, Marvel Universe context.
Because Beau Pribula's got good hair, but whole different style, right?
Oh, yeah, much different animal. Much different. By the way, I would like to know what Beau Pribula's 40 time is. He looks unbelievably fast to me.
Fast legs. His legs move.
Oh, man.
He's got
motor. That dude can motor.
He has gotten faster. Saquon Barkley got faster at Penn State, like, visibly. Yep. Okay? I think Beau Pribula has, too. I mean, he was good in high school running the ball, but not like this.
He didn't run away from guys in high school and that's saying something because he was fast. But I mean, he's running away from guys.
But he refused to give us his 40 time in preseason. He would not answer it. He just gave us that great Beau Pribula smile and said, "No, I'm not going to tell you."
Frank, if we ask Coach Franklin who has better hair, you or Tyler Warren? Because I mean, if Coach Franklin's shouting your hair out in press conferences, I got to think he's actually going to pick you over Tyler.
Yeah, but Tyler and Beau have way more hair than I do. That's the issue. I can't go there anymore.
Yeah, I think part of it is that Franklin likes what you've done with the hair. What you've done with the hair you have.
Okay. Maybe
he's very into the meticulous grooming.
Yeah. Coach Franklin, very astute on those Zooms.
Yep.
Yes.
Mike and I are jealous. We can't rock the hair of either one of you guys. Just real quick, going over these Tyler Warren stats. He owns 108 career receptions, which is tied with Terry Smith, defensive back coach, 17th all-time at Penn State. He passed Saquon Barkley and Tony Johnson. We're going to say he tied Tony Johnson because Tony Johnson doesn't get credit for that against Iowa in 2002. Not that I'm holding a grudge along the sidelines, but we know that was a catch. So, and his 59 receptions are tied with Chris Godwin in 2016 for 8th at Penn State. And on the night, he jumped Saquon Barkley on Saturday, Dwan Johnson, Terry Smith, Derek Williams, Geno Lewis. That's a name we haven't heard in a while. Yeah. And KJ Hamler and Mike Gesicki. I mean, these are just in phenomenal numbers. 11 catches of 20-plus yards this season, 18 catches of 20 yards in his career, and is the only Big Ten tight end with 3 rushing touchdowns in a season. I mean, it's a shame he's not getting more Heisman talk because it's such a quarterback-centric award. But in terms of the versatility, you're not going to find a better person. And in the Mackey Award, I mean, this has to be as close to a lock as you could possibly imagine for one single.
And going into the season, he would probably not have been in the top 5 for the Mackey. Mm-hmm. Because there are some guys out there that have some good reputations. The guy from Bowling Green is absolutely would be one of the 2 or 3 guys that, and probably just in terms of pure receiving numbers, he probably has better numbers than Warren.
He does.
When you look at the whole picture,
Yeah.
Pretty unique.
Yeah.
In terms of looking at this game, giving out some hardware, our Lions roar. Obviously, Tyler Warren is going to get one. Who else deserves a Lions roar and notable recognition for how this team not only bounced back, but dominated, and as a lot of people were talking about post-game, probably played their most complete half of football in the first half?
Frank?
Okay, well, I mean, the obvious is with Abdul Carter. I mean, that was a pretty impressive performance. 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. He now leads the country, Power 4, in tackles for loss, 15. Yep. That was, and he's getting better. And I think it's true, that he gets more comfortable every week at his position. So what's coming next? That's a pretty big thing. And then maybe I'll go a little bit under the radar. I'll go Kobe King because I think he has really found himself. I mean, he's given about the most steady effort every game now. I mean, it's not like it's highlights all over the place, but he had an early sack and he's just playing good. I think he's playing like, if you're looking for a guy who's taking and maxing out his ability every week in the best ways, I'd look at him.
As I told Andrew before we started, my guy was going to be Kobe King, but
really,
it seems like it seems like we should talk about the offense a little bit. And I thought the most significant thing about this game, this Washington game, was the fact that they targeted and got some production from the wide receivers against one of the statistically best pass defenses in the country. And people might look at that like raw pass defense numbers and think, well, okay, they're not giving up a lot of yards. That's because people can run the ball against them. No, they were one of the best in the country in pass efficiency defense. Anyway, so with all of that in mind, I'm going to go with Harrison Wallace, who is a pretty good wide receiver and certainly the best wide receiver I think Penn State has. And in terms of just thinking about last week, in terms of Penn State's got to get better at football. Forget like not turning one loss into two and flushing the previous week and all that psychological stuff. They got to get better at football. I thought they made real progress in that regard in the Washington game, getting the ball to the line.
Just before I pick mine and I give out my Lions roar, just to comment on Harrison Wallace, and I had this in my notes during the game. The in route that he ran in the first quarter was a great route, driving his defensive back off, setting down and making the cut. Drew Aller on time and hit him right in stride. Then, for Mike, to your point, in the second quarter, going the opposite way, just past midfield, there was a combo route where a go route was run from the slot, and then Harrison Wallace was at the top of the screen if you were watching on TV, and he made an in cut, I believe, about 12 yards. And I just thought that was a well-designed combo that Andy Kotelnicki came up, and once again, the ball was delivered on time. So, like you said, get better at football. And we talked about that last week on the podcast about if Washington is so good at defending the pass, this is a game where Penn State has to get better at the pass. If they're going to force feed the sugar, this is the game to do it because they need to get better going into the playoffs. And I definitely think they did. And even if it's only, smoke and mirrors, it's at least a good feeling going forward for the guys that they can do this against a good team. My Lions roar for the game is Jalen Reed. I love that he came up with an interception. I love that he came up with the interception after a little moment on the bench, and I was really hoping they would bring him into the media room so I could ask about it. I tried to ask Abdul Carter about it and A.J. Harris, but they didn't know the answer. He made a tackle 2 plays before the interception, or maybe the play before the interception, and went low on Coleman, clean tackle, but a coach came up to him, and it looked like started jawing on Washington sidelines. And Jalen Reed was like going back and was like, looking at the sidelines and shaking his head, was a little bit of smack talk. And then he backed it up on 2 plays later or the very next play. I'm not exactly sure of the sequence, but I'll give him a Lions roar for that. In terms of an unsung hero, I'm going with the entire secondary. I thought A.J. Harris played really well. I thought Kimber played really well. And not just in the coverage aspect, because I know Washington struggles to throw the ball. I just thought they were physical coming up and challenging running backs, making tackles on Coleman, and just being physical, which is what I think they're going to need to be if Penn State wants to get to where they want to be.
And so far, those guys have worked out, I think. Those back end guys, I think they've been good. Yeah, no doubt.
And I think, circle back to Trey Wallace, I think the ability and the production and the impact is there. Okay, we saw it. He had a great opening game at West Virginia, right? But not steady. We haven't seen it, but it's there. And I think maybe I don't know if I call it a hidden moment in the Ohio State game was, it might have been the second quarter. Drew Aller had him open down the field and just threw it too low. And Trey Wallace had to go down off the grass, try to pick it up. Okay, it was called a catch. Then it was overruled, incompletion. But Drew even said if he hits him in stride, which he knows he should have done, that's a big play. And I think it makes things look a little different. And it's positive that after the struggles, that they came back and they found him and they made it kind of look easy to me on Saturday night.
The thing with the wide receivers is it's not that they can't catch the ball. It's not that their ball skills seem terrible. It must be that they're not getting open enough. So there's a lot of reasons why that could be. Or do they not run routes good enough? Do they not? Or is it a Drew Aller thing? Is it a play design thing? So we saw some evidence, and Andrew, you were talking about it with that combination route thing, that maybe they just are getting a little better at route running, scheming these guys open? Maybe.
I think the route running definitely against Ohio State was lacking when you look back and actually slowed it down. And there's a couple guys on the Penn State beat that do that. Lendon Tangwall did it. Thomas Frank Carr was doing it for on 3, I believe. And it just, you look at when you're playing against a top level team, you try to, I don't want to say shortchange, but you feel like everything has to go quicker. So routes are being rubbed off a little bit sooner, or you're not making your break as sharp as it should be. And I think that's mental. I just think that that's mental. And that's why games against Washington are important, to go out, back to fundamentals, run your route the way it's supposed to be run. And then when your quarterback hits you in stride, that is a confidence builder going forward. So I feel like Penn State did that. One thing that we talked about with Trace McSorley was tough conversations that take place after a loss. That was what I wanted to ask some of the guys. Now, there wasn't a lot of offensive guys outside of Warren, Katron Allen, and Drew Aller that were brought into the media room, but a lot of defensive guys came in. Kobe King being one, and with him playing a great game, wanted to make sure I talked to him. Same with A.J. Harris. And I asked him about the tough conversations that were made in the preparation for this week's game to make sure they didn't turn one loss into two. Here's Kobe King and A.J. Harris.
We go week by week. We take one game at a time. We move on from a loss, move on from a win. But I think this week's point of emphasis was just not redeeming ourselves, but made a statement, because we didn't do that last week, and today we did. So I just feel like we made a statement today, and we showed what type of team we are.
We can't dwell on the moment of the loss. That we have to move on, because everything is just a moment. And if you dwell on the moment, we'll allow that to leak over into this week and it ruin this week's preparation. So our biggest thing was just blessing the loss and just, trying not to have too many of those conversations about the loss. So just fix what was wrong and prepare for what's to come.
Now, Abdul Carter, when I asked him, he was a little bit more shorter. He goes, we took the criticisms, we had the conversations, and we moved on immediately. So I think that goes off of James Franklin press conference, that this was not an easy week of practice, and that those tough conversations had it. I think Penn State made a statement that says when the committee comes out with seeds at the end of the year, if they take care of business, you could look for Penn State to be on the 6th line. Your guys' thoughts?
Well, I think they're going to be higher than 6 tonight when the committee announces their rankings. But you're right, it could change. There's a lot of things that could happen. Upsets in the ACC or Big 12 championship game would be a good example of things that would complicate this. But they're in good shape to make playoffs if they do what they're supposed to do. I really think this week's game is more of a challenge in terms of the psychology, because you're going on the road against a team that you should not, absolutely should not be on your level at all. And it may not be the electric atmosphere that you've had the last couple of weeks. In fact, it won't be. We know it won't be. I think this is the week where maybe last week it's let's focus on what's wrong with us and try to fix it. I think this week is a little bit more about the psychiatrist couch a little bit.
Yeah, I think these guys though tasted what it was like to feel the success. I think this week can be about having fun. I mean, more than any other team, or at least offense, it seems like they're enjoying playing in this for these coaches, especially on offense. Yeah. So you get some success, build on it, have fun doing it. I'd expect them to come out pretty loose. I would be a little surprised if they struggled too much. And for the playoffs, it's interesting because in a way, it almost doesn't matter where they're ranked. I don't think at this point, I can't see them getting a higher seed than 6 because of the way that, the top 4 seeds are the conference champions. And if you can keep things going, getting that 6th seed, I think would be a good thing for them.
Yeah, 6 is all. That's right. The way it's set up, because it's almost unimaginable that Big Ten and SEC, it's almost unimaginable that not only they're champion, but the runner-up is not already in. I mean, right. to get in that championship game, you would have to be ranked highly enough nationally that that's almost automatic. So 6 or 7 is almost as high as they could possibly go. And of course, you would be hosting a playoff game in December at Happy Valley,
which is all you want, right?
Which is all you want. We're gonna reach out and we're gonna try to get the lowdown on tickets and how that is going to be allocated.
Yeah.
That is a very big talker. I was talking to people up there on Saturday. I've made some phone calls today after Veterans Day. Also want to make sure we reach out, and I apologize that this is taking place 25 minutes into the podcast. Just want to say thank you to all the veterans out there for doing what you do, which allows us to do what we do and enjoy the freedoms that we enjoy here in this country. So that's going to be a big talker going forward. A lot of Penn State fans, season ticket holders, if they don't get their seats for a home playoff game, there's going to be some, let's say, phone calls made in the athletic department and to see why that's not taking place, but we'll see who controls that. When you look at the college football playoff, I look at Penn State getting a 6th seed as possible being optimal. Now, we don't know where they're going to put Boise State as a group of 6 or a group of 5 team. We also don't know how they're going to allocate the SEC and what's going to happen with Indiana, whether they win against Ohio State, which could complicate a whole bunch of things. But just let's say Indiana loses. Does Indiana get an 11 seed and they get matched up with Penn State because they didn't play in conference? That could happen. And then does the winner of that game go and play a BYU or Miami if Penn State's a 6 seed? I could see that.
A lot of that will depend on how Indiana does against Ohio State.
Exactly. And if Notre Dame is if it's a 7-10 game, well, then the winner of that game is possibly going up against the SEC champion. Or maybe
that's a serious one this week, in my opinion.
Say that again, Brian.
That's a serious game this week. Undefeated Army.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in seeing what happens to that game.
And Boise State is probably very fearful of an outcome in that.
Right. Right. I mean, that's overthinking a little bit, but yeah, you're right. That's true. So, I mean, they just took one.
Well, Penn State takes care of itself. That's the only thing they can do. You win your last 3 games where you're favored, you're not going to move too far because the committee's already valued what they've done. I don't think there's any question in that. So you just got to win the 3 games you're supposed to win, and you'll.
And honestly, yeah, you're right. And honestly, a lot of things that have happened since the final gun of the Ohio State game have helped Penn State in that regard. Clemson losing, Georgia losing, LSU's out of it now. I mean, Pitt. I mean, Pitt wasn't a serious candidate, but they certainly have dropped off the face of it. Am I right? And I'm Iowa State. There's a lot of things that there's a lot of results that worked out to sort of fortify Penn State's position, I think.
Yeah. If Purdue's going to pull an upset, somebody's got to make a ton of plays for them to pull an upset. Now, Purdue did beat Urban Meyer one year when Ohio State went in there, and they thumped them. That's a totally different Purdue team. They had some
coach, different.
Yeah. They had some playmakers, especially on the outside at wide receiver. This is not that Purdue team. But I'm gonna throw a wild card out there for the biggest threat to a Penn State win, and I'm gonna go with, as I look at my notes here, Dylan Thieneman in the backfield. 5 pass breakups, a sack, 75 tackles. I just think of him as, hey, he's wearing number 31, and this is my thinking. 31's a Penn State number. If anything bad is gonna happen, it's gonna come with the guy who wears a number that's near and dear to a lot of Penn State fans' heart. And he's going to be a guy that gets a chance fumble recovery, a chance pick 6, and makes life a little bit more difficult to Penn State. I mean, it's hard to come up with a bigger threat for Penn State for a team that's given up 38 to Oregon State, 28 to Nebraska, 66 to Notre Dame. They did whoop Indiana State without Larry Bird, 49-0, and gave up 49 to 50 to Illinois lost.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew, you do know that Purdue's lost 8 games in a row, correct?
I know.
And that they're the only I think they're the only Power 4 team that has not beaten another Power 4 team this whole year.
You are correct. But hey, it's CBS's 3:30 game of the week. They could have had Georgia, Tennessee, and they got Penn State.
God knows that doesn't mean anything anymore.
Straight line. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, for that.
That's right.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I had to do a breaking news story this week, and I have not even begun to familiarize myself with Purdue.
Well, there's not a lot there really, Mike.
Yeah,
The guy that Andrew mentioned is a stud. All right, and they have a running back who's capable, and a couple other players. I mean, but I think they're just more of kind of an internal mess because they fired their offensive coordinator in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
And their head coach, who, I'm not wrong, he's a defensive guy, right?
He's a defensive guy, but he's calling the plays. That's right. Which is, yeah.
And it's, I guess I give credit for hanging in there and taking Illinois and Northwestern to overtime. But at this point, when you lose 8 games in a row and you find all ways to lose them, Penn State's got to go in there and just have a practice and work on this and have fun and be done with it, man. Move on.
It's almost like our 1994 Nittany Lion flashback as we flash back to pretty memorable years. Penn State on the road at famed Franklin Field, Michigan waiting the next week. But the Nittany Lions go down in front of 34,000 folks. It starts to rain early in the game, and the vaunted, high-powered Nittany Lion offense up against the Temple defense. We are chants galore. What was the score at the end of the first quarter? That's right. The Nittany Lions were down as they did not light a single light bulb on the scoreboard. They did take a big 28-12 lead into halftime as Penn State went on to beat Temple by a comfortable margin. We don't have to rub it into the Owls, but just know that in 1994, Temple led after the first quarter over the Nittany Lions, and that is your 1994 Nittany Lion flashback. How's that?
Andrew, Joe was so pissed after that game at Franklin Field because he knew they played bad. He knew they were not. It's like they did not. They went through the motions, man. He was very unhappy. But you know what? He knows how to coach, so he got him ready for the next game, didn't he?
I guess. Yeah.
Frank, do you have an impersonation of Joe after that game in the press conference?
Mike, it's been a long time since I talked to you guys, but it's been good.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, that's not. I was good at this when I did it every week, but it's been a while, so.
The Temple student newspaper did make a note that Coach Joe Paterno looked very upset after the Temple opening drive that put one on his Nittany Lions with 2 chunk plays or explosive plays, as Coach James Franklin would say. I think Penn State fans would be wise to maybe pay attention if you're not traveling out to West Lafayette, Indiana. Great road trip, great stadium. I like it as a small little stadium. Media facilities, not too great, but one of the best press boxes. So for you guys heading out there, I'm a little jealous. I always like the press box, especially with the view out the back. And just don't get run over by the train. You don't get run over by the train coming in, everything is golden.
Well, an interesting thing about Purdue is that when we used to go out there, we would park in this big grass field. And that was the media parking. And then it was a little bit of a hike to the stadium. And then one year we went out there and Pete Dye had designed a golf course on that grass field, partly on that grass field. So Purdue University had a new golf course. And at that point, we were being golf carted in from the parking lot of the golf facility. So that was just an amazing sort of upgrade there that I didn't even know about until I got there.
Yeah, you're going back to 2016, Michael.
Well, it all runs together after a while. You know that.
Yeah, that was the year that Penn State went to Indiana 3 times in 6 weeks. The state of
that's right. That's right. I remember that. Yeah,
I was very exciting year. The last time Penn State was at Purdue was very exciting. Sean Clifford hit right before half for that touchdown, and then that big clutch drive to win the game. And that's where apparently the phrase "keep stacking" came from. Now everybody says keep stacking. I distinctly remember recording on my phone, Sean Clifford looking at me, winking, smiling, walking off the field and going, keep stacking, baby.
Yeah.
And now here we are.
He was very impressive in that game at the end. He really came up huge.
Yeah, he was. The legend of Sean Clifford took a big step forward in that game and moment right then and there. Guys, is there anything we didn't cover? We've talked college football playoff. We talked a little bit about Heisman Trophy. I think Penn State's in a really good spot. Mentally seeing the guys after the game in the media room. Tyler Warren down, taking photos with the saxophone section on the Blue Band. He's out there taking a bunch of pictures. Abdul Carter got great video of him conducting the alma mater. Completely different vibe from the intros at the game when the student section let it go. I don't think you boo your head coach before the game. Let that go. I mean, hacky, classless. I think move on.
Vulgar. As Joe would say, it's vulgar.
Anything to close, Mr. Bodani.
Just that I think they have a different, there's a different vibe. I even think that there's confidence, and I think, you need that in that I think they know what their abilities are. So that all of a sudden, to me, the Minnesota game doesn't look the same way as it did to me a few weeks ago. I think they know what they can do, and they get denied Dennis Sutton back fully, and that's a big piece. I think their defense is trending upwards, and that can carry them like good pitching staff.
Well, I still think the Minnesota game is a big one. I think that's I don't think that's an automatic one. I'm still not entirely convinced about them winning the line of scrimmage and running the ball against really quality opponents. And I'm not telling you that Missouri. I'm not telling you that Minnesota is Georgia or anything like that, or Texas. But I do think they're a physical team, and going on the road in that spot when the focus is so narrow and what you have to do, I think that's a tough spot for Penn State. I'm not saying they're not going to respond, but I think it's a tough spot.
I'm excited to see some running back depth come out. Don't expect to see Nick Singleton this week, definitely. Possibly for Minnesota, as Coach Franklin said, he's dealing with a short-term injury. We did not see him for the last quarter and a half, so I don't expect.
Yeah, that's an issue.
Corey Smith, had to showcase some speed and some wheels late in that game.
Yeah. Now, the one thing about Singleton is he has become a really good receiver. So that's he is a significant weapon in that piece of it. But we'll see. It seems like it's been nagging most of the year with Nick. He has not been 100%. It seems like.
And I think it was a good call to get him out. Yeah. Get him out of the game. Game was in hand. So I like that. That's why I don't think he's going to play this week. We got a couple minutes left here. Let's get to score predictions. I'm going to go first since I've, passed the buck on responsibility of going first the last couple of weeks, kind of trying to read you guys. I'm going to pick 48-6. 48-6.
40.
Inspired football puts one on the board. We're a couple field goals after last week's 45-0 beat against Ohio State.
Man, Andrew, you stole. I have my prediction done. It's coming out tomorrow morning. I have 48-10. How can I have the same score as you do? But I'm not going to change it.
I almost go 48-14, but Mike already picked on Pitt today, so I didn't want to just pick that to pick on Pitt because it's my favorite Penn State score of all time. 48-14.
I wrote down 41-10 here, which is very similar to the way you guys are thinking.
Wow.
I think that they're going to be able to score against these guys. Cruise a little bit.
There you go. That sums it up. They're going to be able to score a little bit. I think they will. They too.
Offensive vibing. None of us had them getting in the 30s against Washington, and they did that basically in the first half. So that's a credit to the offensive staff. A credit to the guys, especially in this new era of college football where a loss doesn't hang over you like a dark cloud and you're living on a prayer like Bon Jovi. All right, that's it for this edition of the Blue White Tailgate Podcast. For Mike Gross of LNP, Frank Bodani of the York Daily Record, and myself, reach out to these guys. Make sure you're reading all their columns. They got great stuff week in and week out that they're publishing on their outlets. And we got a great show coming next week. Dwight Galt is scheduled to appear. We're going to talk about keeping these guys healthy late in the season and also the relationships built between the strength and conditioning coach and staff and also the players. So that's coming up next week. Make sure you tune in for a little Minnesota preview. That's all. Blue White Tailgate Podcast. We roar with you next week.